everyone, and welcome back to our podcast. Today we have Katia from Villa Plus joining us. Welcome, Katia.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, my pleasure. How are you enjoying the sunshine today?
Yeah. I mean, it's quite sunny now, and the weather is fantastic.
Yeah, I can see the sunshine coming through your window, which is quite nice.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, it's coming to the window. I'm looking for my lunch break.
Lovely. Katia, for those that don't know you already, I'm sure many do, but do you mind just giving us a bit of an introduction to who you are?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm currently working as a head of revenue at Villa Plus. It'll be close to 5 years now. Time flies when you're having fun. Prior to that, my background is hotels. So I started with hotels, and I did what in the old days was the natural career progression from reservation agent, supervisor, manager, and then revenue. I did. Prior to this role, I also worked for car rental industry for about 5 years, also as a head of revenue. So yeah, I touched different industries and obviously product.
Yeah, interesting. And was revenue management or hospitality ever a career you wanted to go into when you were younger, or kind of what was the dream?
It was the dream, believe it or not, and revenue management is a career that I have chosen. The day I came across revenue management, where when I started as a reservation agent, my boss was promoted to revenue manager. And when I asked her what she was doing and what was the role all about, I realized that day that that's what I wanted to do. So I feel very lucky that I am in the career and the industry that I have chosen. As I said, I have moved industry and I work for car rental, and I'm now back to the travel sort of side. And yeah, I really enjoy what I do.
Yeah, and obviously sounds like it started when you were a reservation agent and you got exposed to revenue management. How did you get into that position? How did that come about?
Oh, literally, I did the progression, which became quite natural in the sense of I got promoted internally, and then people that have moved across other companies, and they approached me and said, "Well, would you like to step up in another role or within the same company structure, maybe different property?" So it was a natural progression and promotions up to revenue management, which was always my target. At some point, as I believe probably most revenue management come across, I had the choice to maybe move into a more operational / GM role. And I've taken the decision to remain within this career path because it is what I enjoy to do, and I think it fits my skills as well.
Was it quite a natural move for you then? Was it kind of just made sense with the skills that you had already to go into a revenue management type role?
Yes, and probably was the reason as to why I got attracted immediately when I found out what revenue management was. When I saw it, and I had to do with numbers, but also obviously in the hospitality you have to do with a customer journey. The sort of the combination of the analytical side and the commercial side, two things that really interest me naturally, and quite good at it. So I have decided that was my career, and I haven't lost any passion for anything. It has increased with time.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. And did you do anything before that you were in hospitality that maybe didn't work out, or did you just actually have quite a smooth sailing process into it?
Before, I actually worked in hospitality when I was younger to pay for my studies, bar and sort of restaurant work during school holidays. So I always had quite a bit of passion for the hospitality myself. I did go into a reservation role simply because I was looking for an office environment, because I had some challenges with my back, and I thought, working long hours on my feet is probably something that I need to avoid going forward. I didn't have any ideas of what I wanted to do in my life, in my career at that point. And as I said, it's just because I was fortunate enough that my boss at that time was doing that job, and for me to have the curiosity to ask what was all about and seeing it with my own eyes. That's where my passion started, really. So I was lucky.
Yeah, and I think actually we were talking earlier, just before we started recording, about the RMAPI conference, and I think that's something that they mentioned in terms of skill sets for a revenue manager, one of them being curiosity. So that makes a lot of sense as well. And in terms of taking the route from a reservation agent, do you feel that and that's obviously a route that many people do take to get into revenue management, do you feel that definitely helped you make that transition with the skills that you would have learned as a res agent?
I think it has. I don't think it's necessary though. And I know obviously the path to revenue manager can come from different sources, and obviously there's been a lot of talk about making sure there is that learning from an academic perspective rather than just experience. So I don't think it's necessary. There's definitely a link with the bookings, so that is what a reservation person does do, and understanding of the customer and the needs that really help revenue management. And is applying best practices to it, because at the end of the day, it is the customer that you have in focus when you do your strategy. And I think I might be actually touching to that as well, but it's about a presentation that we attended, is about making sure you have that win-win scenario for the customers and for the company from a revenue profit perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And before you were in hospitality, did you go to university or something then beforehand?
I did go to university, yes. As you know, it's not quite all of, at least in my old days, very old days.
No,
Revenue management isn't quite, it wasn't sort of a career that you really didn't know about until I studied. So I think, but the experience is definitely what took me there more than the academic knowledge. I think the combination of the two, if nowadays people can actually learn about revenue management from an early days, and then have the ability to practice those by internship or whatever career progress and path, then the combination of the two would be absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I'm not too sure how many students at university hear revenue management even now, so I can imagine when you're at university it wasn't really spoken about at all, was it, if ever?
No, exactly. As I said, I wasn't even aware it was a job until I came across it. So
yeah, it would have been probably called more pricing then as well, rather than kind of the revenue management industry, I guess.
Yes, and consider that don't let my perfect English and accent fool you, but I'm from Italy, and in Italy and in Europe, I think the revenue management is still behind what it is today in the UK. So there was also that element that to be considered.
Okay. And then, so once you've got a bit of experience under your belt, like you said, you've tried a few different industries. How do you think revenue management changes in those industries?
I tried different industry, and I have in hotels covered different hotels type, if you like. I've done the 4-star, I've done the 5 stars, I've done the corporate office, and I've done some more special sort of demand-oriented hotels linked to sports events, for example. And I've done, as you said, different industries. I was really curious, and I was approached most of the time I wasn't actively looking to enter a new role. The reason why I moved industry and I moved away slightly from the hospitality and the hotel side is because I was really interested to know if I was able, what would be the differences in a different industry in terms of revenue management. What I did notice is that actually there isn't much of a difference in the sense of the way and the brain will work and the strategy will be applied and the concept. Obviously, there's different, products that you will sell, and you need to be able to sort of look at the industry or the product that you revenue management and making sure that you apply those strategies relevant to that product. But in terms of the way you be thinking, I think there's a lot of correlation and transferable skill set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's what many revenue managers talk about, how it is so transferable, but still there tends to be some silos still in certain industries where they don't accept other industry experience. I mean, do you understand that view, or kind of why certain companies would only look at certain industries? Or
I don't understand it at all. I do. I'm nodding because I'm aware of this. And again, I have been experiencing myself. I can tell you that I don't actually think that there is any sort of basis. I mean, that surely depends on the candidate, depends on the individual. Doing exactly what you'll be doing in one industry will not work in another. Mm-hmm. You will have to make adjustments to make sure that you do what does work. But the principle of this, and again, the train of thought is identical. Mm-hmm. So just the ability of considering the needs of your company and the products that you're revenue managing. For example, in car rental, the biggest difference from hotels was the car move, unlike hotels. Your capacity would vary quite considerably. And also consider that you probably you have to forecast capacity as well as demand. So the two moving elements rather than just one. Mm-hmm. But you can't do that, and to a certain extent, you do it in hotels when maybe for whatever reasons you have to, maybe for refurbishment or maybe because of a problem, you end up with a different capacity than you initially thought you had. Mm-hmm. So no, I don't agree with that point of view, and I can't think of an example that would change my mind in that sense.
Yeah.
Anything that could not be revenue managed with the same best practices that I know today.
Yeah. And do you think there are any challenges that you can recall you having when you've changed industry at the beginning? Kind of, were there any difficult parts of it that you managed to overcome with training, or just being able to get more experience in it that's helped?
I think the terminology is definitely one. Mm-hmm. You have to learn new terminology, and you tend to fall into the old habit of calling something the previous one. So right now I have a rep pub instead of a rep bar, which is a villa rather than a room, for example. So you tend to sometimes go back into fall into that habit of utilizing an old term. The terminology is very, very important, which obviously lead to communications. But other than that, I think it's more about when you start a new role, you have to learn everything that you don't know. And mm-hmm. the fastest way for revenue management, in my viewpoint, is to first dig very much into details, into history and data. That will give you a really strong quantitative knowledge. And then the other knowledge, the other data, and just picking on your colleagues' knowledge, which obviously you would do through an induction process. Mm-hmm. Once you get that together, then
the same concept once you've got a grasp of the terminology.
Yes, absolutely.
Makes sense. And so your role now at Villa Plus, I think probably everybody knows what Villa Plus is, but do you mind giving a bit of an insight into what a head of revenue would do for Villa Plus and what the types of products are that you work with?
Yes, absolutely. So we rent holiday villas were a great topic to discuss in this weather.
Yeah.
So as you and I think we were talking a couple of minutes before you start recording. Great weather, fantastic. Would be even better with a pool just outside. And that's what we offer. We offer bespoke products, villas with private swimming pool where people can have their holidays and also build valuable memories with their friends and family and loved ones. We do have properties all across the Med, Italy, France, Greece, Portugal, Spain, and various properties and beautiful villas. I guess probably the biggest challenge that I have at Villa Plus is not daydreaming when you try to price your product.
I can imagine.
Picture yourself there. But yeah, Villa Plus is obviously a well-established company worldwide now, and has been 36, 37 years. In terms of my role, I'm heading the revenue management department, which look after obviously the revenue managers, so making the most of our revenue from a Villa perspective, especially in conjunction with the product departments that will look more at Villa level sort of revenue side, and also the ancillary products as well, car hire, transfer, all sorts.
Interesting, thank you.
Yeah.
And I guess then talking a bit more about your experience in the industry as a woman, would you say throughout your career you've faced any particular challenges being a woman in the industry?
It's an interesting question. I think in terms of maybe not having possibly enough women in sort of a leader executive roles has made it slightly more challenging in the sense that you obviously want to reach a certain level in your career. And I had to say, for me, it's still quite a limited amount of women in such roles. That possibly probably the biggest challenge I would say I would face, knowing that my target was to become a head of revenue or a commercial role in my career.
And do you think it would have been, what difference would you think it would make if there were more women at a higher level within the industry? Do you feel like it would just create more of a supportive environment, or?
Yeah, for starters. And I think but more like someone to be looking out for in terms of, in terms of someone that a leader. I think I personally believe that a mix or diverse people within the company, being this sex or being race or being sexual orientation, just make a better team.
Yeah.
And I have noticed, in particular, I guess, in the car rental industry, which is quite male-oriented, as you can imagine, that when you get to a certain level, you have more male presence than women's presence. So I think having that inspiration, being myself a woman, more ladies that I could inspire to in terms of seeing myself in such a role and giving confidence to reach that would have possibly have helped. And I think there is a bit of a need of that. So we all know that there is a bit of a disparity in the number of female versus male at a more executive level.
And do you think there's a reason for that? Do you think it's more cutthroat for a woman to get to that position, which is why they go to different routes, or is it just the way it is?
No, I don't think necessarily it's due to that. I think it's more I'm a mom myself, and I think the journey we go through during that process of having children has probably a stronger impact on a woman than it has on a man. It shouldn't do. And I think it's getting better. Possibly not as fast as I like to say it, for example. But when you go through having a child, well, there is both a social and financial reason as to why is the lady then takes the longest maternal leave, parental leave. When you then decide it's time to come back to work, then you have, as a woman, to take a decision, and you have to balance out your salary and your career versus a really high cost of childcare up to 3 years. So that gap, that could be, short of 6 months to a year to 3 years, that makes, I think, more difficult for a woman to go back to work, because if anything, you miss out on 3 years, possibly 3 years of career, promotion, ability to prove yourself what you can do. It's a small, I think it's just a small element of that, but there's also possibly an expectation that when women go back to work, they might be as up to date, for example. And I actually gained some experience on my own skin, but also through colleagues. Nowadays, I work very closely to ladies, Stella and Laura, they're both mom. And I have to say, from my personal experience as well, I'm way more efficient than I was before I had children. Why is that? One, because I have to. Because obviously I need to maximize my time. Two, because when you sort of go through the motherhood, where you breastfeeding with one hand and playing yes and no game with your eldest, and with the other hand maybe cooking or doing a presentation, those are skills that you bring to work when you
100%. Yeah.
So in my experience, if anything, you become more efficient and more motivated. Surely your children are number one, but I believe it's the same for the father, for the male. But to the children, it's just when you come back, there is that need to complete and always working on tight deadline, and that make you become more efficient naturally. Besides, I think women as well, possibly we have this natural emotional intelligence, which really help with communication, building teams, and also all sort of building relationship, sideways, above and below. So I think all these elements really does help you throughout your career, but there is that sort of not obstacle as such, but that difficulties which need to be addressed somehow, of taking some time during your parental leave and not necessarily being incentivized or going back to work because of financial reasons. Pardon me?
Yeah. So I was just going to say, there's clearly so many skills actually you take away from being a mother and having that time with your children into your role. So it's not actually just personal related, it can benefit your work life as well. But absolutely correct, it can be very difficult for mothers to get back into work. And like you said, the financial aspect of it can be extremely challenging, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I have thought myself, I was already a mid-managerial role when I had my children, and even though financially I was better off going back to work, when you put it down to not seeing your children for many hours during the week, it wasn't such a strong incentive. The difference was quite minimal. I have decided to go back to work for two main reasons quite soon after I had my children. The first one was that obviously I wanted to continue my career. I didn't want a large gap to stop that progression, that and the journey that I was going through. But the second and possibly most important reason is that I want to be an example for my children. That, you know, work hard, play hard. So now that I got, to be honest, I'm quite lucky. My children are quite academic, but the time then, you know, they wake up and they say, I don't want to go to school. I said, well, I don't want to go to work. But guess what? You're going to school, I'm going to work. And tonight we're going to treat ourselves with the movie or something for our effort. So I want them to see that that's also important. Then a woman and a mother also has satisfaction in a professional career as well as at home, of course.
Yeah, that's really lovely, making sure that you've got someone that they can aspire to if maybe you've lacked it at certain times, with there being not as many women in the industry, for example. So that is a good way of looking at it. And do you think there are particular policies that they could implement then that would make that transition a little bit easier for women coming back to work? Is there anything that you would have liked to have support wise?
I think what's very important is the flexibility, which I have to say I've been very lucky and support to have. Well, first of all, I honestly think going back to work compared to a parental duties is way easier than dealing with a screaming child, to be fair. But I've been quite lucky of getting a flexibility. I don't do a job that, you know, required. Of course, there's an urgency, but it can be done pretty much 24/7. So the fact that I'm able to being able to cut some time to either do the school drop off or pick up, or for example, to attend an award in a school that they have and then catch up with work later in the evening or early in the morning, for me is so important because it gives me the best of both. And I don't feel that my work is impacted in any way, form, or shape. If employers provide that support or more of that support, I think women and mother will probably feel more comfortable in coming back to work, to be able not to have to miss out on important things that, you know, once they're gone, because eventually they come to a point that your kids don't really want to see as much as you as they did when you were younger and when they were younger. So they're very, very precious time. That flexibility, I think, probably is the most important. And also, again, going back to work, it can be quite an emotional time for a mother, I would say, a father as well, if it takes a longer period of parental leave. You know, making sure that the person doesn't feel step back, making sure that there is that sort of support from a progression and training perspective to help out redirecting people through their career path of the choice.
Yeah, I think it's good that since the pandemic happened, flexibility is something that is a lot more common now, whereas before the pandemic, many people couldn't work from home. There was very rare companies that would allow remote working, for example. Then we get more flexible working regardless if you're a mother or not. So actually, hopefully that would be something that would make that transition a little bit easier for anyone that's having children nowadays. And then hopefully that support of actually being able to see how their career could proceed when they're back to work after parental leave or maternity leave would definitely help them in that process moving forward as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I have to say, probably the only good thing about pandemic, it's really gave us a bit of a reality check in terms of flexibility.
Yeah, definitely. And we've touched on it a little bit in terms of people that have inspired you necessarily. Has there been any women throughout your career that have inspired you, or have you always just been inspiring to be that inspiring woman?
I was very lucky. I had plenty of inspiration throughout my career of very charismatic women. My first role as a revenue manager was a female GM, who was actually Jules Trinkus, who's the GM of the hotel we went to Amalfi, and I saw her recently, 20 years later. Very charismatic lady, and in my first roles definitely was an inspiration. But across that, many women. I mean, currently I work with strong women, as I mentioned, Stella, and I mentioned Laura. But even a colleague of mine who joined us recently, Tina, after a week that she joined, I think she's now down 3 or 4 weeks. The week after, a daughter caught chickenpox. And naturally, I said to her, take the time off. But she insisted on working because we were quite busy. And she presented a really successful strategy on Teams, of course, with a sick child on a lap, a perfect strategy while consoling her. I thought I was absolutely amazed by what she has done. So I come across really inspiration and strong women every single day. But the one person that I think has really changed my career was my previous boss, Nikki Gregson. She has a natural leader, very charismatic, and she is the person that taught me how to use emotional intelligence to communicate and make sure I get the buy-in from other people, depending on how they possibly perceive, especially analysis, documents, how to present them to get the best buy-in to it and communicate most effectively. So it is the one woman that has truly inspired me and just actually gave me the confidence to move forward with my career.
She's great, and funnily enough, I actually recorded an episode with her 2 episodes before this one, so that's really lovely because everyone will know who she is now as well by that point.
Yeah. Excellent, that's great.
Yeah,
she's wonderful. She's wonderful.
Yeah, she is. And throughout your career as well, have you ever had like a mentor or a coach that you've gone to have that support, or has it really just been your colleagues, maybe?
I would say in every single role I had, I always felt that my direct boss has been my mentor, be a female or male. And I always say I'd rather work for a good manager in not so good of a company than with a manager probably don't see eye to eye in a great company. I think the manager is the person, and hopefully I am the one to my team that should support you, inspire you, and makes and push you throughout. So Nikki, for example, very demanding manager. I have to say, probably the most demanding I ever had. Loved it because she really pushed me, and she managed to get a speed up into my progression, where I can see I'm learning and I'm doing better than I was previously. So I do think that when you're leading and when you're managing a team, you do have a lot of responsibility, supporting, developing, and inspiring your team. Definitely 3 of the most important ones.
Absolutely. We actually have recently put together a talent acquisition report, and we did a survey with candidates who were basically just to see what are the most important things that they look for and reasons for leaving, and a whole range of things included in that. And I think one of the top things that people leave is because of a bad manager, which I thought was interesting, and you can completely appreciate it. Everyone that I definitely have a great manager, and it definitely helps your process in terms of career progression and that side of things as well. So it's so important. What things do you think that you do in order to try and kind of promote that in your company, being a manager and heading up the revenue team?
I hope that is what I promote. I hope I'm leading by example and everything I said. So I think the support think, and a lot of it again, learn from others, from other really good managers, is to get people to perform the best to their capabilities, push them to perform the best, support them throughout the process, make sure that you get them to reach their targets. Their targets could be anything, could be a career progression. There are people that maybe not so interested in career progression. Maybe they want just to learn different things outside work or the business environment. So make sure that you support them throughout their achievements and where they want to get to their targets. Always lead by example. So make sure that what I ask, I'm also prepared to do. Strong communication and team bonding, I think, is very important as a leader. Make sure that the team is in fact a team. They do not work in silos, and we all help each other's. So hopefully that's what I bring to
It sounds like you do, definitely. I can imagine that you do, Katia. Definitely.
I don't want to hear the further comments on the podcast from my team.
No, never. I'm sure they wouldn't say a bad word about you. And Katia, I like to end the podcast in the same way every time. What advice, or what is the one piece of advice that you'd maybe give your younger self when you were thinking of joining the hospitality industry, or now knowing what you know, what advice would you give to others thinking of joining hospitality or revenue management?
That's a lovely question. I think about confidence. I think is make sure that you have the confidence and you aim for the stars. I will say this to possibly women, especially who I think possibly we have less of the confidence in terms of what to achieve and what to ask. Something I was talking to with my colleague Stella the other day, in regards to actually doing this podcast, that we were sort of having a conversation about possibly women have less confidence in asking. If you don't ask, you don't get. So I would say to my younger self and to all the young talent out there, first of all, pick a profession that you love, that you want to do, that you enjoy doing. And when you've done that, just go for it with confidence, because I have no doubts you'll get that.
Yeah, take that leap of faith.
Yeah.
And are there any resources or qualifications or anything in that sense that you'd recommend someone going to if they are thinking of a career down this path, or do you think that they just need to take whatever route they think's best?
Well, I think nowadays, thankfully, I can see some movement in terms of training and, also some academic, getting more principal revenue management as such into the programs. But I think if someone wants to go to any career, being revenue management, just keep yourself up to date. Make sure you attend conferences. There's plenty of information online. And if you truly have a passion, reach out on people such as myself or others who are quite happy to do some mentoring or share some experiences, because people have done it for me. So I'm happy to return the favor. Keep yourself up to date, read articles, attend all the events you can, online or in person, increase your knowledge. And with that, if it's the right career path for you, with the knowledge, you also increase your interest and passion for that role.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Katia, for coming on the podcast. It's been great hearing your journey and your advice and your tips to everybody. And actually just reminded me when you said about Nikki inspiring you, is Nikki actually said people that inspire her are women in the industry with children. So you are actually someone that would inspire her as well, which is really nice, I think. But yeah, thank you so much, Katia. I'm sure you'll inspire many women listening to this one today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucy. Lucy, it's been absolutely pleasure to be doing this podcast. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, it's been lovely.